Well, there's still a lot of unanswered questions in regards to the Toronto Blue Jays, and a big one comes in the form of their bullpen. Who slots in where? Who has a spot? Are there still names out there? A whole lot to talk about on today's episode of Locked On Blue Jays.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network, your team every day.
Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. If you're a new customer, just bet $5 and you get $200 in bonus bets if you win. As always, I'm Brayden. He's Carter First. A lot to get into on today's show, so we'll hop right in. Our thoughts, our feelings on the bullpen. Who else is out there available? What battles will ensue in spring training for these guys to earn some spots? Are we satisfied with what they have brought in terms of this bullpen? And then we're going to take a look at a little bit around the league. Who going into next year are going to be the top 20 free agents? There's a list posted. I'm going to ask Carter his thoughts and feelings on some of the more important pieces and maybe that the Blue Jays could take a look at, again, going into a potential lockout. But Carter, my man, weekend off. Everybody hopefully had a good one. How are you doing?
Doing good. Unfortunately, I think we're officially in the dog days of the offseason. No more big moves going to be coming to the Toronto Blue Jays. There might be minor league additions. There might be smaller additions. Hopefully one more to the bullpen. I think that's one thing people can realistically wish for. But yeah, just waiting for more sports to kind of happen here. Waiting for the Super Bowl, waiting for the Olympics, baseball, the World Baseball Classic. Not the greatest time to be a sports fan. I think better times are coming ahead. And it's freezing in Winnipeg where we are right now, so that's definitely not fun either. But we haven't talked about the bullpen a whole lot this offseason other than the Tyler Rogers signing. The Toronto Blue Jays, other than that signing, haven't really addressed the bullpen whatsoever. And it did make a lot of strides from 2024 to 2025. The bullpen was very good compared to 2024. You hope that it can take that next step. You get a full season of Louis Varland. You have Tyler Rogers. You have Yimi Garcia, who could hopefully come back and be healthy. There's a lot to like about this bullpen, but I think a lot of fans would be a lot more happy if you just added a little bit more stability to that bottom end of the bullpen.
Yeah, absolutely, Carter. I think, as we went through last season, we saw a lot of peaks and valleys with some of these bullpen arms, and that's what happens. In a major league season, these guys pitching, if not every day, every second day. And you're going to see stretches where these guys really do have success. A guy that comes to mind, first of all, has to be Brendan Little. Right? There was a stretch there that we were considering Brendan Little to be the number one guy you could rely on. And then he fell off the face of the earth. Jeff Hoffman went through his ups and downs all season with a overall pretty fantastic playoffs besides, the last home run given up. But besides that, you could go up and down this bullpen and everybody needed to be better in some points and were great in others. So I guess, Carter, where do you want to start here? I guess let's start in-house before we really dive into who's still available on this market. But in-house, is there one guy in particular that you're looking at as you need to see a lot from in spring training? Let's start there.
I think a big one is going to be Yimi Garcia. We know how good this guy is when he is healthy, but unfortunately in recent history with the Toronto Blue Jays, and especially with the relief pitchers, you have one injury and then things kind of fly off the rails. Eric Swanson, you have Jordan Romano, you have Brendan Little near the end of the season. You have a few guys that kind of just lost it completely. And I really hope that isn't going to happen for Yimi Garcia. I don't think it will happen, but I think it's unfair to set the expectation where this guy is going to be your setup man going into opening day, going into the regular season. Spring training will be big for Yimi. We'll have to see where his velocity is at. We'll have to see how he's controlling the baseball. The sequencing, stuff like that, Yimi's been in the league for a long time. I'm not too worried about that. I'm just looking at the spin rates. I'm looking at just the velocity. I'm looking just at how is he delivering the baseball. So I think Yimi Garcia, out of honestly almost anybody, there's some other guys you can argue that might be more important to watch in spring training, more important to this bullpen going into this 2026 season. But I think it all starts really with Yimi Garcia and how he can complement the high leverage situations.
No, I 100% agree. I don't think there's anybody else. I think there's not one other guy that I'm going to be more dialed into than Yimi Garcia. And it's the simple fact, right? He can look good, he can feel good, but then he steps on the mound and, hey, his velocity is dipping or his spin rate's not where it needs to be. And that's a huge concern. And we haven't seen this guy pitch in a major league game in quite a long time, Carter. So he's going to absolutely has to be the number one guy on anybody's radar. So if you're tuning in to a spring training game and you see that Jimmy Garcia is going to get some time, I think that is going to be a big draw for spring training. And just to see how some of these other guys get utilized and maybe what they're focusing on. Carter, I'll throw you another guy's name here, and that is Tyler Rogers. I think just to see how he fits into this lineup, I know there's a lot of people that are excited about this guy, specifically coming off of Trey Savage's start. Hopefully being able to run those two guys in the same game could be a deadly weapon, but you have to see what he can do coming out of Kevin Gausman, coming out of Dylan Cease. And to me, he's been fantastic, and I think that this was a great addition for the Toronto Blue Jays. But again, it's going to be different when we actually get to see him on the mound in spring training with this ball club, and sort of not necessarily his skill set necessarily, but where they choose to use him. And that won't be something that we get to see really played out in spring training. That is going to be more of a regular season thing, but something that's really been sort of eaten at my mind, because you have Jeff Hoffman, you have Jimmy Garcia, and now Tyler Rogers. And so where do Jimmy and Tyler Rogers fit into a 7th, 8th, 9th inning?
I'm not even worried about that whatsoever. I think these guys are going to be serviceable enough that you can kind of interchange them. I don't think you have to put a full-on title on Jimmy has to be your 8th inning guy. Tyler Rogers has to be your 7th inning guy. I think a lot of it will be situational. Tyler Rogers is a guy that doesn't strike out a whole lot of guys, but pitches to contact and gets a lot of soft contact. So if you maybe have a guy that's, I don't know, we'll say it's Jimmy Garcia, bad example and bad time to bring this up, but say he has a little bit of a stinker, and then you have some runners on base, Tyler Rogers would probably be a good guy to go to try to get that ground ball. Maybe it's a 2-out situation, bases loaded, you might want to go to Jimmy Garcia over a guy like Tyler Rogers if Jimmy Garcia is healthy, just to get that strikeout. It's all situational with a lot of these bullpen arms, and with a lot of these right-handed options that the Toronto Blue Jays do have, throwing Louis Varland and Jeff Hoffman in there as well. I think for a closer, I like to have, kind of that clear-cut closer, the guy that knows when he's going into the game, that he knows it's the 9th inning, hey, it's kind of my time to take over. It's my time to really assert my dominance and show why I'm one of the best relief pitchers on the team, because if you're the closing pitcher, you should be one of the best relief pitchers on the team. So I think with that, you have to have a clear-cut closer, but in terms of the 8th, 7th, 6th inning guys, it's all situational. It's all on what the opponent's lineup is looking like, what the lefties are, what the righties are, how the platoon matchups work out, the bench options. There's so much that go into it. So I think you have to have that clear-cut closer. But for everybody else, a lot of it's the peaks and valleys, how people are performing. And there's just a lot more that goes into it rather than just, saying one guy is that guy for the 8th, 7th, or 6th inning.
Sure. And I totally get that as well. And that's something that plays right into John Schneider's wheelhouse, right? Him and Pete Walker, they like to mix things up, whether it's utility guys throughout the order and on the diamond, or if it's their pitching staff. They like to be able to work situationally. And I think that's why bringing in certain guys like Tyler Rogers is so massive. But another guy that probably doesn't get enough talked about, or at least this offseason, that I'm super excited to see is Louis Varland, Carter. Just the way that they used him and the amount they used him in the playoffs. I mean, that can't happen in the regular season. But I think to have the knowledge that this guy can go out and give you innings every single day, worst case is you need him, I think he's going to be a crucial component to this bullpen.
I think especially early on in the season, depending on what you get from Jimmy Garcia, you might have to rely on a guy like Louis Varland a little bit more early on. It's going to be interesting to see how he does bounce back from the innings boost that he did get. This guy was a starting pitcher before, so I'm not that worried about how the innings are going to have wear and tear on his arm. But Louis Varland was like the sun rising in the morning with him just playing in the playoffs. It seemed like every single appearance, you were going to have Louis Varland go out in the 6th inning, the 7th inning, whatever it ended up being. Louis Varland was going to pitch in that baseball game. So early on, I think we'll have to see in spring training. I don't think they'll, try to overachieve. He won't be trying to overachieve. He won't be trying to overthrow and overexert himself in spring training. I think the Toronto Blue Jays now know what they have in Louis Varland. I think they're excited to see what he can do for this ball club over a full length of a season. This guy is under team control for a very long time. That's why we were talking about the trade deadline. Probably the best move for the Jays easily at the trade deadline, even with the Shane Bieber move being very good as well. So that's a guy that I think is very crucial as Toronto Blue Jays ball club as well, with some of the uncertainty you have with some of these top end guys, and a guy that just has a fastball that can blow hitters away. You want a guy that can blow a hitter's doors off, get Louis Varland to ramp it up to 101 and see how hitters can handle that.
Yeah, he's an exciting guy to watch, Carter, and probably during that playoff, I think I just ended up placing bets every day that Louis Varland was going to go in. Like that was an option because he just was going in every day. So, it ended up being free money. But he's such a fun guy to watch. And you're right, you don't see too many guys, at least with this Blue Jays team, that are coming in, throwing 99, 100, 101. And to have a guy like Louis Varland able to do that and hopefully build on what he did last year, I think is so important for this team. Because you may see him when push comes to shove at the end of this season. I know it's a long way away, but he very well could be the eighth inning guy for this team. I think it's all in his hands of what he can and maybe should be going into 2026 and further on throughout his Blue Jays career here. Carter, still lots more guys we want to touch on, plus some other acquisitions the Blue Jays could take a look at doing to improve this bullpen even further, but a lot of guys that maybe don't have spots yet or that we could maybe see this season in a bullpen capacity, and that's before obviously we get into who the major free agents will be of next year. Just a quick look ahead to the following season, so still lots more to come on today's show. We'll be right back after this. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You guys know how much we talk about FanDuel and like FanDuel because it's the premier place to place bets. I mean, there just is no better way. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff. The final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season is officially coming to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite riding the underdog or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everybody's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season, make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, you can bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. Make it count because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So, Carter, as we continue to move forward, I think another big storyline is who will find themselves making this roster after spring training. And there's so many guys that you could build a very strong case for. Guys like Brayden Fisher, guys like Mason Fluharty, Eric Lowers. I mean, Carter, take your pick. Out of some of those guys that are right on the bubble, who is the most exciting to you?
There's a lot of lefties on the bubble as well. But before I do reveal my answer, I did want to bring up the Everydayer Club one more time for you guys. Free access to free audio. You don't get ads. That's what I'm trying to convey here. No ads, and we don't like ads. Obviously, ads are taken over everywhere, so you do have the option to get ad-free. Have a free Discord or a Discord as well that we will be very excited to talk to you guys about as we do progress farther into spring training. We'll talk a lot about the World Baseball Classic. We're excited to bring you guys that as well. And we love a bunch of other sports. You do get a discount on other shows as well. So if you like NFL guys, if you like the NHL, the NBA, whatever it is, you have some other hosts that you want to kind of tune into, you do get a discount on their memberships as well. So a bunch of cool things to look into with the Everydayer Club. But this is one area of concern with the Toronto Blue Jays, at least the left-handed bullpen acquisition that we didn't really get. And now you're looking at the options the Toronto Blue Jays do have. You brought up Eric Lauer. You brought up Brendan Little, Mason Fluharty, a rookie that broke out on the scene last year. Some things that I would like to see him tweak, so I think he could be a very good left-handed relief option. I think he's still a good option, not really the guy I'm comfortable with rolling out in that 7th or 8th inning, even though he did kind of dominate his Shohei Ohtani appearances. So lefty on lefty, that's still a guy I do trust. And then Ricky Tiedemann. We talked about spring training storylines with Yimi Garcia. Ricky Tiedemann will be another one that is headlining pretty much every single article you're going to see with the velocity that he possesses, with the injury concern as well. Knock on wood, please just have a healthy spring training. Ricky Tiedemann, that's pretty much what my expectation is. I think that's where Brayden is at as well. So that's going to be an interesting storyline too. We talked about the 4 guys, the high leverage options from the right-handed side. You probably have room for one more. I think right now, Brayden Fisher takes that spot. I liked what I saw from him in 2025. It's a lot of things to like. A younger guy, 25 years old, still does have some options, but I think this guy should be on the Major League team based off what he did in 2025. And then you got your lefty options. And then there's Cody Ponce and Jose Berrios. How are you going to deal with that? You're going to do a 6-man rotation through the entire season? I don't really think that's a great idea. I don't think the Toronto Blue Jays starting rotation, Kevin Gausman spoke out about how he doesn't like the 6-man rotation. you have off days, it's hard to get in a rhythm. So I don't think that is an option for the Toronto Blue Jays, at least long term. So there's a bunch that is going to go into the back end of this bullpen, the long relief options. So I think spring training is going to be one of those things that for some teams, spring training doesn't matter as much because you kind of have some blocks throughout your lineup. For the Toronto Blue Jays, I think there's a lot of opportunity for some players to really prove themselves and fulfill their roles as being an everyday player.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Brayden Fisher, to me, is one guy that I think has shown what he can do, but then again, you're right, so is Mason Fluharty, and there's only so many of these positions available, and it's a great thing. It's a great thing to have, and you're going to have to pull different guys up throughout the season with injuries and other things that will happen throughout a year. But yeah, it's all going to be figured out in spring training, and they'll bring in the guys that they want to, and then it could change. I mean, look at last season, Carter. Lovelady was one of our relievers that we brought to the season.
Just ridiculous. Yeah. Like, that's why every single bullpen arm matters, and every single roster spot that you have in the bullpen does matter. In the playoffs, you can get away with running 4 guys, 3 guys. In the Toronto Blue Jays case, it was really just Louis Varland, Seranthony Dominguez, and then Jeff Hoffman, Mason Fluharty again against Shohei Ohtani in different areas like that. But we look at it through 162 and how often that you're going to have to use some of these bullpen arms. You're not going to get 6 innings to 8 innings every single day in and out from your starting rotation. As much as you might like that, you got to use all of your bullpen arms. And we found that out very early with Richard Lovelady and Jacob Barnes early in 2025. Thank God that we're in a way better situation. I don't think there is a Jacob Barnes, a Richard Lovelady on this roster. Some people might say Brendan Little is that, but I think Brendan Little, with what the expectation should be with him now, is he is that lefty option, but probably is that guy that maybe you roll out in the 5th or 6th inning, not that guy that you roll out in high leverage. So I think that's one more question mark this team does have, is that top end lefty, that high leverage lefty arm. Is it Ricky Tiedemann? Can it be Brendan Little? Can it be Mason Fluharty? I don't know for sure. I would be a lot more comfortable if they added one more lefty arm. There's some options available, which we'll dive into. But yeah, it definitely matters who you have in the bullpen throughout 162 games in the regular season.
Yep, yeah, no, you know what? I got to eat crow on that because I said, I don't really care. You know, you bring in a couple guys, you switch them out, it may change, but who really cares to start off the season? And then those 2 guys absolutely blew chunks. So
2 games for you to like, okay, maybe I got to walk that one back.
Yeah, they were pretty horrible. No doubt about that. But Carter, you brought up the lefties and different options out there available, and there's still one guy that I had on the docket, I think, early into the offseason as a potential bullpen get for the Toronto Blue Jays. Still available, and a guy that I think would fit in here very well. Again, is he a high-end, high-targeted lefty? No. But I think a pretty solid addition, and that is Jalen Beeks. And I know that other people have talked about him, not necessarily for the Toronto Blue Jays, but for other teams. I've seen other people on TikTok and YouTube and whatever talk about Beeks. And a guy that I've said, now for months, that I think would be a good get for the Toronto Blue Jays. Uses that 4-seam up in the zone, keeps the changeup low, has some pretty good, is able to locate fairly well with those 2 pitches. The cutter, not my favorite of his pitches, to be honest. I get a little scared when he throws it because it is a little bit all over the map. But 69th percentile in average exit velo, 70th percentile in whiff percentage. His ground ball rate is 72%. His hard hit percentage is only 58%. He's not one of those guys that's name's going to jump off the page when you look at all the statistics, but I think a very quality option that could be brought into this Toronto Blue Jays team to help them have success, at least early on.
Yeah, not a bad option at all. A guy that has a mid-90s fastball, can kind of ramp it up a little bit as well. When you're looking at some of the lefties, Ricky Tiedemann can do that, but Brendan Little, not going to be a guy that ramps it up a lot. Mason Fluharty, if you know anything about him, he's more of a spin guy. He's probably going to hit 92 at best. Like, you're not going to get the velocity from those guys, so Beeks definitely an option. I'm not really solving the velocity problem with this one, but Danny Coulomb is another option for the Toronto Blue Jays, a veteran, a guy that you kind of know what he's going to do for you at this point in his career, a guy that I'd be a lot more comfortable rolling out in those later inning situations. Now, what's on the Toronto Blue Jays right now? Probably a 1-year deal. It'd be somewhere around $7 to $9 million, I would assume. Do the Toronto Blue Jays want to again spend that money on a bullpen arm? that you do have a lot of certainty in, but it's a bullpen. We've seen how some guys that we think are going to be really good kind of fall off the face of the earth. Some guys you don't have a lot of expectations from kind of find something, and just sometimes it's one little tweak, and then they're a very good bullpen arm. So the Toronto Blue Jays do have options. I think that they should go out and at least take one more shot on a lefty, whether it's a minor league signing. It doesn't have to be Danny Coulomb necessarily, even a Jalen Beeks, just a guy that does have upside. One of those Eric Lauer transactions, that a guy that can maybe have an impact on this ball club. If it doesn't happen, I think that's a missed opportunity for the Toronto Blue Jays. I think you should go and take those shots. But if you shoot and miss, I think this team is in a position where they are definitely okay with that happening, and they can handle missing out on one of those minor league signings with the bullpen they have right now.
Yeah, and I don't think it has to be one of those high-end, $7, $8, $9 million guys. It can be a guy that's worth maybe a little less, that you do take a little bit of a diamond in the rough type of shot on. And I think that's okay, but I would like to see them push the envelope here a little bit. Test guys in spring training. Say, hey, your spot isn't your spot guaranteed. You got to work for it. And I still like that, especially for the bullpen. Make it a little bit of a battle. Make these guys, have to, I don't want to say worry for their jobs, but a little bit, right? You want them to try to go out and give you their best every day, whether it's spring training or the start of the season. So I think bringing in one or two more options here for the Toronto Blue Jays would just, in the long run, I think just help everybody. Whether, and I'm not saying the Jeff Hoffmans of the world or the Tyler Rogers, but the guys like Brendan Little, the guys like Mason Fluharty or Brayden Fisher, because you do want to see those guys succeed. So bring in a little competition. It's never a bad thing. But Carter, in saying all of that, do you have anything else to round out the bullpen here? Because I do want to save some time so we can talk a little bit about the following free agency and just, who to keep an eye on this season to see, where their markets will either jump or dip going ahead.
I think I'm going to make you answer a question on the roster. We have a pretty good idea of what the top four arms in this bullpen are going to be, at least from the right-handed side. Give me the bottom four, whether it's Eric Lauer as your long reliever, the Jose Berrios, Cody Ponce, maybe you have somebody that's not in the organization right now, or at least projected to be within the organization. How many lefties do they take? Just give me your bottom four bullpen arms, assuming that, again, I'll just go over them to make sure we have clarity here. Tyler Rogers, Jeff Hoffman, Jimmy Garcia, and Louis Varland. Assuming that they are on the team, who are your next four?
Yeah, so Brendan Little to me has to be in there. This organization just seems to love him, and maybe the trust level is very low, and a guy that could be thrown back, very early. Him and Eric Lauer to me are two staples. I think they're just in there. Eric Lauer is my long relief guy. I think when it comes to Jose Berrios or Cody Ponce, I think they start the season with Jose Berrios, and then they fit in Ponce where they can as the season goes along, whether it's injury, whether it's performance-based, whatever it will be. But another, probably on a side note, another thing that we should be looking for in spring training are those two guys specifically, and seeing how they handle major league talent, and maybe play those guys when you're playing a team that's maybe stacking a roster one day in spring training, when they are going to have to face active MLBers, because that's where those guys will need to be tested. But moving ahead with my other two, it's Brayden Fisher and it's Mason Fluharty. Those are the two guys that I want to see, and I want to see them succeed. I think with the way and the season they had last year, to me, it's just hard to argue. I think those two guys prove that they should be there. And again, when it comes to bullpen, anything can happen. You can go 1 year and be very good, and the next year you just can't find your stuff. But I would rather test it with those guys, and have them work through some stuff early on, have problems early on, right? Not be at their absolute best so that they can go and figure it out for later in the year, because I think we've seen how effective they can be. So yeah, Carter, I guess that's my 8.
I don't mind it. I think we're on similar thought process here, but there's a couple things that I would change personally. I think Brayden Fisher has to be on this bullpen, has to be in the bullpen rotation. I think exactly what you said, what he did last year, what he proved, and especially for a young guy making some of his first starts as an MLB player. I think that is something that you can be inspired by, something that you can be excited for. See what Braden Fisher does in 2026. Mason Flaherty, once again, the way he handled one of the best hitters in all of baseball. And Shohei Ohtani, you trust him in those lower to mid leverage situations against lefties. We've used him in high leverage situations, so I think he'll only get better. I think just looking at the lefty situation here, I think what would make sense, the most of the Toronto Blue Jays in the perfect world, it's Ricky Tiedemann, who is that high leverage lefty, the guy that could blow your doors off, the guy that has all the potential in the world, can even be worked out as a starter. Before this team right now, the current composition just wouldn't make a lot of sense for Ricky Tiedemann to be the starting pitcher right now, unless you want him to have that full season in AAA, which is an option, but I think Toronto Blue Jays are clearly in win now. I think it would benefit them greatly if Ricky Tiedemann could kind of find himself in that bullpen. Already threw 97, maybe, has that velo spike with him being available in the shorter term and for a shorter pitch count. Can kind of just let it eat, and that's what I want to see from Ricky Tiedemann. And I think the hardest question for me to answer during this offseason, throughout spring training as well, is who in the world is going to be that long relief arm and who's going to be in that fifth starting rotation spot. There's one guy that's going to be left out. For some reason, I feel like it is going to be Eric Lauer. Eric Lauer, a guy that has options. I feel like he might start it out in AAA. With what they paid Cody Ponce, I don't know who's going to start, if it's going to be Cody Ponce or Jose Berrios. I still have to take more time to figure that one out. But I would lean towards them going back to Jose Berrios, but Cody Ponce was pretty much promised that he was going to be a starting pitcher. So we'll have to see how that is worked out. Not as concerned at who it is, but I think that's going to be an interesting decision. But I would love to see Ricky Tiedemann have a breakout season and be that dynamic lefty this bullpen needs.
Yeah, so I'll start on the Ricky Tiedemann thing. Just knowing this organization doesn't seem like they would start him in the show. I think they're going to start him lower, and throughout the season, that's when you'll see him get brought up later in the year. But I don't think it's going to be a day one thing for him, and that's not me. If it was me, I think get this guy MLB ready and get him up there. But I've seen this happen before, and I just don't think it will.
For where I'm at with that is, like, if he's healthy, like, you don't know how long he's going to be healthy for. Like, you kind of want to see what you got at this point for a guy that's, I believe, 24 years old.
No,
You're
I'm with
running
you.
out of time, but in a sense, you're running out of time to see what this guy has.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think he should be by this point. You bring in starting pitchers, and there's no room to put him there. But again, that's just how baseball is, and I think he's going to get the shaft at least to start the year, and then as guys fall off, he will probably be brought up. I don't think it's going to be like a Trey Savage thing where it's a week before the playoffs, but it might be maybe closer to the trade deadline, or if a big time injury goes down or something like that.
I could see it being, honestly, for opening day, but even earlier, like not earlier than that, earlier in the season, being maybe a month in the season, maybe it being May. I could see Ricky Tiedemann being a guy, especially if you do roll out Brendan Little and maybe the wheels fall off once again. You need that left-handed option. There could be an option as well, but there still is a lot of guys available in the free agent market, so they could take a shot on one of those veterans, one of those random Spencer Turnbull. Hopefully it turns out better signings than that for a guy that was coming off of a massive injury. I think the Toronto Blue Jays are done taking risks on guys with injuries, unfortunately, with the way the Max Scherzer thing went, with the way Jordan Romano, Eric Swanson, they got out of those ones when they needed to. But I think the Toronto Blue Jays are moving on from the uncertainty and injuries, and they want to kind of know what they're going to get from a player.
Well, and that's going to be super interesting as well, seeing if Shane Bieber comes back 100% healthy to this season. Otherwise, all this talk about Ponce or Berrios may not be even a question. Because
baseball has a funny way of answering those questions for you. So hopefully it's not like a major injury or anything, but I feel like just the way baseball works, something's going to make it a lot easier for us to answer these questions.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll come back. We're going to take a quick break. I'm going to ask Carter what he thinks on the, it's not a survey, but an article that came out on the top 20 free agents going into 2027.
Already looking at the next offseason. Haven't even jumped into 2026 yet. We're looking ahead.
Yep, got it. So when it comes to the 2027 offseason, there's an article that came out of early ranking for next winter's top 20 MLB free agents. And it's not so much to think, who will the Blue Jays get, but guys to keep an eye on this season, right? Will their markets skyrocket? Will they sink with a bad season? So Carter, I'm going to get your prediction on a few of these guys. We'll start off number one, Tariq Skubal. I mean, a guy that I think everybody's excited to see what he can do this season, especially within sort of the infighting that has been going on in the horribly managed situation by the Tigers. What are you expecting with him? Do you think this is going to be the biggest price increase of all time?
No, the Detroit Tigers finally pay the dude, and he goes back to Detroit. No, unfortunately, I think he's the most obvious Dodger of all time once again. It's something that I'm going to hate to see, but I think the Dodgers will see what happens in 2026, and we'll have to see if they can figure out a resolution for the lockout allegations that are seemingly becoming more and more realistic. But I just think he's going to go to the Dodgers. I think they're going to give him a contract. It's going to be one of those Kyle Tucker things where it's going to be a shorter term, but they're going to give him all the money in the world once again, and it's going to be very tough for him to refute. And you can't blame the guy, and I really hope it goes a different way. But I think this guy has Los Angeles Dodgers written all over him.
Carter, an interesting one here at number 2. The number 2 ranked free agent is Bo Bichette, because nobody in the world believes that he's going to stick around in the Mets for a second season, unless, they do absolutely amazing. But even this site has Bo Bichette retesting free agency. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, Pete Alonso's done it. Alex Bregman has done it. Like, it does happen with a lot of these players. $42 million is a lot of money, but we'll have to see how Bo Bichette does perform. A lot of it is his own performance as well. Bo Bichette at third base gives me a lot to be concerned about. I'm not worried about the bat. We know what the bat is. We know Bo Bichette is going to be unbelievable offensively, but defense does matter, believe it or not, to a lot of organizations, especially the Toronto Blue Jays. Maybe one of those reasons why they weren't going to fork over that AAV, and maybe one of those reasons why they didn't extend Bo Bichette. Had some internal concerns when you've seen a guy really, as soon as he went into the league, seeing him develop. So it would be hilarious if Bo Bichette, signs the contract with the Mets, plays 1 year, and somehow goes back to the Toronto Blue Jays. But I think a lot of it's going to be determined off of how he does perform and how his defense is specifically at third base. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some trial and error. Maybe Bo Bichette gets moved at some points, and maybe he plays a little bit more DH than initially anticipated.
Carter, and you know what, I'm going to go over more of these guys as we go throughout the season, but I'll end it with this one, and he's number 7 on the list, Kevin Gausman. What kind of season do you think he'll have, and do you think that there's any chance of a reunion with the Toronto Blue Jays after this season?
I could see something short-term with Kevin Gausman. With Chris Bassett going into last year, I kind of knew that was going to be it. The Bassett show would be over. I think Kevin Gausman still has more in the tank. I don't think it's going to be a 4-year contract. If it does happen, I believe it would be a 1 year, maybe $25 million AAV. Depending on what Kevin Gausman does this year, I think we have, out of all the guys in the starting rotation, I think Kevin Gausman is the easiest to predict, at least for the Toronto Blue Jays. I think he will give you that probably number 2 starting pitcher numbers. Won't necessarily be the ace numbers, but will turn it up in the playoffs once again, hoping the Toronto Blue Jays do get there. So with Kevin Gausman, just excited to see, the splitter fastball combination, some of those 8 strikeout games, 10 strikeout games, just seeing him put hitters in his back pocket. It's hopefully not the last dance with Kevin Gausman, but I am sure that his market will be hot. There will be teams that will be in on Kevin Gausman once he hits the free agent market. Can't see the Blue Jays extending him before that. This will be a guy that does hit the open market and has a little bit of a bidding war for his services.
And there's a lot more of Toronto Blue Jays that are coming off the books next season. We'll get into a lot of those guys as we continue on throughout the weeks, the months, and the season. But Carter, we have a crazy about week and a half here. We got a lot of people lined up to join the show. A guy that everybody that's been on before, but they're going to rejoin us and have some bigger conversations and let us know how his free agency or his offseason went and how he's looking ahead to the 2026 season. So a lot more to come for us in the weeks ahead. But Carter, one last time, I'll throw things over to you.
A bunch of cool things from the Everydayer Club. There's a members only Locked On merch store. There's national bonus shows you get access to. We're going to have our Discord again. We're very excited to talk about all the stuff from the World Baseball Classic and what the Toronto Blue Jays are looking like throughout spring training and obviously all of 2026. So we encourage you guys to join. It is $5 a month. You can get $50 for the full year as well. So some pretty good deals there, some access to a bunch of bonus stuff. We're always trying to bring more to you guys, and this is just another way that we are trying to do that from the network. So thank you guys for watching. All the likes, comments, support recently has been very much appreciated. We're getting closer and closer to being back to 5 days a week. Coming February, we will be back on our regular schedule. So we got Monday, Wednesday, Friday this week, back to Monday through Friday the week after. But yeah, excited for just sports to kind of come. So excited for the Super Bowl, excited for the Olympics, excited to see other things, especially with the Vancouver Canucks playing some of the worst hockey that I literally have ever seen in my entire life. We'll talk to you guys again on Wednesday.